This week's edition of Church Media Design TV is sponsored by Print Management Solutions. Welcome to another edition of Church Media Design TV, tips, tricks, and how-to for you, the church media designer. I'm your host, Brad Zimmerman, and every week I come to you with tutorials and how-tos on how to use the media that surrounds you to share the story of Christ. We want to help increase God's kingdom by using the media to effectively share that story. And joined with me every week is the Fearsome Fivesome. We have Sean Spencer and Burton Guster from Psych. We have Little Whitey, Colonel Sanders, and of course, Jesus Christ, the Son of the Lord Most High. Well, in this week's edition of Church Media Design TV, we're going to continue our series on match moving. We're going to bring some text inside After Effects and make it 3D and show you how to make it look a little bit more realistic in a very limited 3D world. As well as we're going to give you some great freebies and some great resources. So if the Fivesome are ready, let's get into it. Well, we want to reach into the stockpile and grab you some resources, and the first one is bit.ly.tv. Now, bit.ly is a URL shortener that is used for Twitter and sometimes Facebook and websites, and the cool thing about bit.ly is that it does stat tracking. So if you ever see a bit.ly link, you can add a plus sign to the end of it and it will bring you to a stats page and show you all the information and all the analytics about how many people have clicked on that and that sort of thing. So bit.ly's been around for a while. It's a favorite of a lot of people. I use it always, and it's built into programs like TweetDeck and CSMIC and other programs. Well, one interesting thing they just did is they came out with bit.ly TV, which is bit.ly.tv. So it's not bit.ly/TV, it's bit.ly.tv, and it's what the world is watching now. And if you check out the page, it's very interesting because you can see what the most popular videos are that are being passed around. You can watch them in a very nice little pop-up player. You can see here. As well as you can flip this to now, yesterday, today, 3 months ago, 5 months ago. So you can say when you want to know. And it's just a really interesting thing. I know it's not exactly in its fullest form. It's kind of in beta yet. One thing I hope they'll add is kind of most popular this week or most shared over the last 7 or 10 days or 30 days, because that would be nice. But why did I share this with you? This is a great way to know what people are talking about in the culture and be able to know, hey, what videos are everybody finding interesting? If you're a youth pastor and you want to know what's that cool new funny video that all the students are passing around that I have no time to go look to try figure out, you could check this out and see if you can find it. So some interesting ones like the Muppets Bohemian Rhapsody show up and Lost season finale from The Onion. So there's some different things on here, so check that out. The next site is SpiderPick, and SpiderPick is a interesting site, and what this site does basically is you can search on this one site for premium stock photography, and it will give you every single site that's selling that same photo and let you see price comparisons. So you can do random searches as well as you can search for individual images. So we could go here. I found this photo on iStock. I think it's kind of funny. I've used this photo as well as almost every designer in the world. You'll recognize it from a lot of different posts. I'm just going to search for that right now on SpiderPick, and you can see here that it sells on 2 different sites, and on Stock Expert it sells for $1 to $10, whereas on Crest Stock it's from $5 to $15, and I think iStock it sells from $1 to $15 as well. But you can see here the resolution of the medium size of 11 by 16 is only $3 on Stock Expert, whereas it's $9 on iStock Photo. So you can definitely do your shopping around and find your images. So even if you really like using one site, you can use a URL, and it's a really sweet tool to be able to check out. So check that one out, as well as our friends over at, well, they're not my friends, but everybody knows them. It's Smashing Magazine, and they have 25 new high-quality free fonts, and these are new as of this year, so these haven't been being passed around for the last 18 months. And there's some pretty interesting ones in here that I think you guys will enjoy. I kind of like this interesting swirl going on here, and one of my favorite types of fonts to use for posters and stuff. They have a nice blocky, this lot font that I think is real nice to use for t-shirts and that kind of stuff. So check out smashingmagazine.com, SpiderPick, and bit.ly.tv. We want to say thank you to our sponsor of Print Management Solutions. If you have a print need, this is a great place to turn to. This is who we use at our church to cover all of our print needs. And we just switched over to their new print management program, where you can rent or lease a printer, and you get a full service contract with it. So it covers all of your maintenance, all of your ink, and you pay a low monthly rate for all of your prints, and it ends up being a lot cheaper than it was before. You can also still get ink and toner if you need that, but make sure to go check it out. You can find it at printmanagementsolutions.biz, and fill out the sign up fields and do your name, address, email, and phone number, but make sure in that promo code to put Church Media Design in there to let them know, and you'll get a discount, and you'll help us out by helping out yourself. So check it out. Well, on last week's episode, we talked about match moving, which again is the art of taking a real footage that you've shot and extrapolating a 3D camera from that footage. So we used a program called PFO, and it does motion tracking on the scene and actually figures out what the camera is doing and how it's moving, so that you can bring it into a program like After Effects or Cinema 4D or Blender, and you can put 3D objects or text or whatever into the scene and make it look like it's a part of the scene. Now, you see this in commercials every day. It originally was developed for a movie called Jurassic Park. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a good one. You should check it out. Lots of screaming and dinosaurs and men being eaten off toilets. If you haven't seen that movie, you should check it out. But if you haven't seen last week's episode, I would encourage you to check that out as well. This week, we're going to just be inside After Effects, so let's jump on in. So inside After Effects, you'll see we have our footage here, and you can see we've imported it, and all those little null objects there are all the little tracking points that we left inside our scene. At the bottom, you can see we have our footage that we've brought in here, as well as our camera, and if we hit the U key to reveal all keyframes, you can see all of the keyframes that PFO created. So there's, X and Y rotation and zoom, and all of that stuff is changing every frame to make it like the camera movements of when I originally shot this. So the first thing we're going to do is create some text, and we're going to just type out spring cleaning, because who doesn't like to clean? Now, I really want spring here soon, so but what we're going to do is we're just going to mess around with a few different values in here and make this text look a little bit more interesting. So the first thing we're going to do is not make a new text box. We're going to undo that. We're going to grab all this text, and we're going to change the spacing between our characters, scrunch it up quite a bit so there's some overlap between characters. And then let's make spring quite a bit bigger so that it's about the length there. And then let's make our line spacing a little bit tighter. So now our letters have some overlap, and this helps the 3D object look a little bit more sellable. At least what I figured out from the videos that I created using this technique. So the next thing we're going to do is set ourselves up for success for the future. Just in case I would maybe misspell something, which I do often, I want to do a couple things. So we're going to go to Layer, and we're going to go to Pre-Compose. And we'll just call this Spring Text Master. And we're going to hit OK. And inside here, it's opened up a new composition, and this comp is just going to house our text. So I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger, and what we're actually going to do is pre-compose this text one more time. And you'll see why in a minute. So we're going to do layer, pre-compose, and we're going to call this spring text. Hit OK. So now we have spring text, and we can make this text look however we want it to. I like it the way it is. So now we can go back to our spring text master. We have all of these different compositions, and we're going to make these 3D. And now we're going to start layering our text to make our 3D object. Now, a good rule of thumb is to try have the spacing be really tight, but you don't want to have more layers than you need. So we're going to mess around with an expression so that we can easily alter the spacing between layers. But first, we'll show you how to do it without the expression if you don't want to do that. And basically, all you would do is hit Control-D, which duplicates the layer. Then you would take one layer and just scoot it back. And so you're just going to push it back in Z space, and you'll see that it moves backwards. And I would encourage you to change the color to something, let's say, a little darker. And maybe we'll make it the background transparent so we can see a little bit easier. And since this isn't a text layer, we can't just change it to gray. We actually have to do an effect. So we're going to do an effect of generate fill, and we're going to generate, dark gray, let's say. So now we have our gray layer, and we can move it back just a little bit. The other thing you can do is you could go to position, and we'll hit position here, and we could say, okay, I only want it to be 10 pixels away. So you could type in 10. And then for the next one, we could hit position, and if you didn't want to type 20, you can actually do addition and subtraction and multiplication within these values. So we could do plus 10, and we'll add 10 more and make it 20. But this gets quite tedious and quite boring, to be honest. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this first layer, and we're going to zero this out. So we'll put that at 0. And we're going to do a little expression. So we're going to alt-click on the position stopwatch. We're going to drag this to this position value, and it's going to give us what that is. So this value is found at this comp.layer of springtext2 .transform.position. Now we want to do a little bit more with that. So I'm going to hit my tilde key to bring this up full screen, and we're going to make a little expression here by going like this. So we're going to say x equals this, and then we need to pull out the x value. So we're going to do bracket 0 bracket and then a semicolon. So the x value, 640, is the 0 value of that whole position array. Now an array is just 3 comma separated. In this case, it's 3 comma separated values inside of brackets. Arrays can be huge, and arrays always start with 0. So the x value is 0, y is 1, and z is 2. So we're going to just change that to 1, and we'll change this x to y, and then the last one will be z equals, we can actually just paste, and we'll just change this out. So z equals, and we'll put 2. But we actually want to add more than that. So we're going to do plus, and then inside parentheses, we're going to do this dot index, which is going to give us basically this value here, this dot index, and we're going to do -1, which seems a little crazy, and we're going to put that inside parentheses. So it's giving us the index -1, and then we're going to multiply that times, let's say, 10. Okay, so, and then we need to actually add in bracket x, y, z, and then end bracket. And you can see our value here, and now it's given us 10. If I would duplicate this layer, this is now 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on, which is great. And the reason we did -1 is I don't want 2 here, I want 1. But what I want to do is make this a little bit more dynamic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit our tilde key again. I'm going to go up to the effects controls for this top master layer. We're going to do effect. We're going to go down to expression controls, and we're going to do a slider control. Slider control basically is a slider that gives us a ton of values, and we're just going to type in 10 for starters. And right here, instead of this 10, I'm going to delete that 10, and I'm going to pick whip to this slider value. It's going to throw in a bunch of text there, but it's doing the exact same thing. But the cool thing is now I can go here and I can change this 10 down to a 5. And now you can see that's been altered, and every single instance will be altered as well. So we can make, a whole bunch of copies, and then on this top layer we can change this from 5 to 10 pretty easily, and all of a sudden you see our spacing get bigger. And so we could actually animate our spacing going in and out, but you can see as the spacing gets further away, you can see more distinction between that. So we kind of want to find a nice easy point in the midst of it, and that's looking pretty good to me right now. So now what we want to do is take this this composition and put it back into our master comp. So we have it inside our master comp. We're going to make it a 3D layer, and then we're actually going to hit this collapse transformation button. If I hold on it, you'll see it says that. And what that does is it allows a 3D object to remain 3D in a new composition. If I wouldn't hit this button and we would move this guy up, you would see that it looks like a 3D object, but if I would rotate this, it is a totally flat object. But if I do collapse transformations and it's a 3D object, and I move this guy back up again and rotate him around, you'll see that we have a fully 3D object. Now you can see you see all the layers when we flip around it, and you can kind of see some of the faults of this system, but we're going to hide those faults as well as we can. So what I want to do now that we have that is I want to find one of these null objects, and I want to place this text where these null objects are. So I'm going to grab this guy because I like its position. I'm going to hit the P key and pull up its position properties. I'm going to do Control C. I'm going to go back up to our Spring Text Master. I'm going to paste those values there. So now this is at the exact same value as that. And the reason that we paste these is because even though you could move the text around and get it in the right spot, it's really hard to know where is that null object actually sitting. So if you can use some from the scene, it'll help you place this much more accurately. So now I can just alter this a little bit here, and we can change our rotation up a little bit and get this guy sitting in the scene the way we want him to. We can also scale this layer up if we want to, and find a spot. Now if we scrub along the timeline, you'll see that you're seeing a little bit more depth here and there, and it's kind of moving into the scene nicely. So now let's make this look a little bit more realistic, and the way that we're going to do that is with a light. So we're going to add in a new light, and I just right clicked, or you can go up to composition or layer, new light, and we're going to use a point light, and we're going to tell it to cast shadows, and that's all we need to do for now. We're going to pull up the position, we're going to paste those same position values to this guy, and we're going to drag this up, and then we're going to pull it back in 3D space a little bit, maybe move it over on the X axis, and you can see we're getting some good shading on there and that kind of thing. Well, what we need to do is we need to set something to actually cast shadows. So inside this Spring Text Master, I'm going to take my top layer only, and I'm going to pull up the material options. I'll hit the tilde so you can see this a little easier. So we have our material options. I'm going to tell this one layer to cast shadows. And then all the other layers are accepting shadows, but only this one is going to cast shadows. And this is kind of key. So now in our master, you will see that we have one layer that's casting shadows, but all the other layers are accepting those shadows. And now we need to mess around with how those shadows look, because right now they're very hard. So we're going to pull up our light options. We're going to say our shadow diffusion is, let's say, 40. And now you can see we're starting to get a much softer shadow. Maybe we'll kick down our brightness to about 50 on our shadow diffusion. And we can also mess with the light position. And you can see here as we move this around, we're starting to get some shadows cast on the inside of this that gives it a little bit more of a 3D feel and look to it. And this is where you just kind of got to mess around and find a look that you like. Also, in compositing, you need to make sure that your light matches up with the light of the real world. So we're going to move this up a little higher. And I just used a point light versus any other light because I like how the shadows and color looks on a point light better than any other ones. And we'll just move that guy up. So we're starting to get some good shadows on here. We're going to kick up our shadow diffusion to like 100. And now you can see we're getting some good diffusion in there. But you can see our spacing is a little bit too big. So we're going to go back here and we're just going to chuck this down to, let's say, 10. And it's going to make it smaller. But you can see that now now we don't see those lines in there and that kind of stuff. Now one cool thing is we can kick our intensity up and brighten up that text a little bit, and since this back footage isn't in 3D, we won't notice that at all. Well, what about casting shadows on the floor? Well, this is a pretty easy and pretty quick trick to do, and all we're going to do is do Layer, New, Solid. We're going to make a white solid, and we can make it the comp size, that's fine. The size doesn't really matter. We're going to make this 3D, and just because I like to be in the right order, we're going to move this below our spring text. And while we're here, we're going to set some material options. So we're going to tell it to not cast shadows, but we also don't want it to accept lights. We only want it to accept shadows. So now we can get out of here, and we're going to again pull up its position property. We're going to copy and paste the position from the text layer. So now it's at the exact same position. We're going to rotate this guy 90 degrees. So we're going to just flip it totally sideways, and then we're going to push it down through the floor. Now one thing we can do while we're moving things around, you can see it's starting to take a little bit of time to render. You can put this into draft 3D mode, and that'll shut off all the lights while we're adjusting some of this scene geometry. So we're going to rotate this on the x-axis, and then we're going to scale this up so it takes up all of the area that we want it to take up. We'll maybe move it back in the scene. Doesn't need to be in front of the text at all, just behind. And we'll make sure that it's at the bottom of that G. Now we're going to shut off our draft 3D mode, and you'll see here we're starting to cast some shadows on the ground. And we can see the bottom of that G pretty well. Now what we want to do, this is pretty simple and pretty basic, we're just going to flip the mode to multiply. And so it's going to get rid of all the white, and it's just going to leave our shadow. And so we can move this layer over so that all of the shadow is in the scene, or we can just make it much larger so that you can see all the shadow that we have there. And again, we can shut off our draft, or put it into draft 3D and move this around so that we don't have to wait for stuff to render quite so long. This is just a way to speed up the process while you're working. Turn it back on, and you'll see that we have some nice shadows. Now, our light isn't in a great position. It's a little too far away, so we're going to bring it down, or actually we're going to bring it up and over. So let's bring this over. And you can see on the floor how our text is changing positions. And we're going to just bring it down just a little bit, and maybe bring it back just a touch. So now you can see we have our text kind of laying out and our shadow laying on the ground. It's looking a little bit more realistic. Now if we wanted to make it look like the text was floating a little more, we could pull this layer down, but we want that to be pretty close. So that's looking okay. I don't love the position of the light, but it will do for now, and you can see how that works. The next thing we're going to do is just do a little bit of color correction to this scene and just show you how I went about that. I'm just going to import a couple textures here, and you'll see here that we have these two different colored textures, and they're just these light colors, and what we're going to do is just use these to colorize our scene. So we're going to take these guys, we're going to drop them right on the top of the scene. We'll scale them down to fit the scene size, and we're going to just pull up a more normal part of this, and then we're just going to mess with our modes. And so I'm going to just hit Shift plus and minus, and you will see our layer change modes here, and you'll start to see some different looks. And you can see how it pretty quickly, so if we throw this into multiply, it pretty quickly changes the look of our scene in a very cool way. So I'm already liking how that looks. I can take this other texture and put this guy into multiply mode as well. And now you can see we have, you know, we got some interesting, we don't want that line on there, so I'm going to rotate this guy. And here we go. And then maybe we go all the way down to the bottom and we just do a couple color corrections to our actual footage. So we're just going to do color correction curves, and we'll brighten up the light values, and we'll just make the dark values a little bit more punchy. So this kind of just makes it a little bit more dynamic looking, and you can see how we start to get a really nice consistent look here. And if we think either of these are a little too much, we can always take the transparency down. So let's maybe kick the opacity of this down to 50%, and you can see it just takes a little bit of the edge off of it. So that's how to make some 3D text and put that in the scene, and you can see how you can easily do that in a lot of other pieces of footage, and how it pretty quickly looks very interesting and looks a lot more professional. Again, you can change the colors of the text, and the reason why we put all those things inside the pre-comp is I can do this. And we'll just quickly show you how to do this. Instead of spring cleaning, what if we wanted to say, you know, open house, and we wanted to make open just a little smaller, so we'll just make this guy like this, and we'll make the spacing between the lines a little different. Now we can go back to our master composition, and every single layer is changed. So it makes it really easy to go and change stuff out. So I don't know why I picked such random pieces of text today, but if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment on the website, and make sure to subscribe to the feed and check out all the different things, as well as if you didn't check out last week's, check that out as well. Well, this week's inspiration is a very interesting one. It is a video called The Third and the Seventh, and this is a trailer from this video. Now, I'm going to spoil something for you at the very beginning before you watch it. All of this is fake. All of this was created inside 3D Studio Max. It was rendered out with V-Ray, and then it was composited inside After Effects and edited inside Adobe Premiere. And this is incredible. It's incredible to see what not big Avatar studios are making. This is what one guy made. And this is, it's pretty incredible to see, and it's pretty inspiring. So check this out, as well as if you go over to the website and look in the show notes / the inspiration page, this will be its own inspiration. There is a whole list of other videos of a breakdown, and it shows you how he built it all, as well as a how-to where he goes through and you can watch time-lapse as he creates one of the scenes, and you can watch the full 12-minute video. This is just one of the 3 different trailers. And also, if you're looking for more inspiration, make sure to check out the website, because the website has its own inspiration area where I'm doing morning motion graphics and a whole bunch of other stuff, so don't forget to check that out. But without further ado, The Third and the Seventh. this week I have another freebie for you, and this one is similar to last week's freebie of the Love Mercy video, but this one is Do Justice. And this is a scripture video again that's got all the compositing and that kind of stuff. And it is for the passage from Amos 5, and this is taken out of the Message. And I think it would be a great video for you to use as you talk about justice and injustice in the world. And it's actually one of Joel Houston's new favorite passages. It's was featured in the I Heart Revolution documentary and that kind of thing. Anyway, you can check out this video. You see it behind me, and you can download this in widescreen, HD, as well as full screen, church definition 800 by 600. So head over to the website and download it today. Well, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Church Media Design TV. I'm so glad you guys could be a part of this week's episode. If you guys have any questions or comments, please make sure to leave those on the website. You can also find my Facebook and Twitter and all of that stuff there as well. And I really want to encourage you guys to check out the website because it is there for you guys, and I'm trying to have great content coming to you guys not only on Mondays but every day of the week. And so we're going to try have inspiration as well as articles and freebies, and it's a lot easier to find stuff, so make sure to go check it out. I'm really proud of the new site, and I hope that you guys will love it as well. So, as for me and the Fearsome Fivesome, we're saying, see you later.